Hello and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, how are you? My name is Ness and I like to talk about books. I just really felt like making a video today and it feels like the weather to talk about books. I own hundreds upon hundreds of books. What you see behind me is not my entire book collection. I do have a lot more. Yes, I will be doing a bookshelf tour once I've sorted some books out. And when I've taken quite a bit of time off work, because I feel like it will take me days to actually make that video. And I do want to read every single book that I own, obviously, or else I wouldn't own it. But I do have some standouts that I'm dying to get to, which are at the very top of my physical TBR. So today I'm going to talk to you about the 10 books that I've been dying to read. I've been wanting to read them for the longest time, but I just put off the books that I really want to read because it gives me something to live for. But these are the top 10 books that I really want to get around to reading. When I'm going to get around to reading them, I don't know. I like the anticipation sometimes. I am predominantly a fantasy reader, and I think you can see that in the top 10 books that I'm looking forward to getting around to the most. I think as 10 books, they really sum up my reading taste. And I've had some of them for many, many years actually, and I've been just as excited to look forward to getting around to them years ago as I am right now. But without waiting anymore, let's just get into it. So the first book, which is really high on my TBR, this is in no particular order, is the second book in the Poppy War series. I've read the Poppy War three times over about the space of 2 years. And I have this awful habit of, if I read a book in a series and I really enjoy it, I end up stuck with that book and not be able to move on. This has happened to me with An Ember in Ashes. I loved book 1 so much. Jade City, I love that as well. And I just feel like I can't push past it because the book that I've read, I've loved it so much and I feel like it's an actual baby. I don't want to move past it because I might read something that makes me not like the series and I get put off the whole series. And this has happened to me so many times throughout my life where I've found a book that I really love and I've read the next book in a series and hated that one and then just been put off it all completely. There's so many times where I thought to myself, I just wish I hadn't read further than what I actually had because everything I've loved about it is gone. So I think I get a bit hung up on that feeling that I've had in the past and I've never pushed past a point that I really love with books. And that's what happened to me with the Poppy War, although I now feel like I am ready after maybe one more reread of the Poppy War to then read the Dragon Republic. Because this is a 3-book series, I've kind of felt like this might get middle book syndrome and might not be as good. But I can't just keep rereading the Poppy War, can I? The Poppy War is an adult fantasy series written by R.F. Kuang, and it draws inspiration from Chinese mythology and history to turn into this epic high fantasy world. This is the first book, and in this we are introduced to main character Rin, who is living in poverty but ends up attending an elite military college after passing a series of tests. When she's there, she discovers that she has an aptitude for shamanism and that the gods in this world are alive and well. While she is still at school, an almighty war breaks out and Rin gets pulled into battle. I don't know what it is about this series that I really love because I don't particularly like the characters that much. I think just in this one, the world building and the storytelling is so amazing and so well written that it just really pulls you into this world and you're absorbed and you are wanting to know what happens next. Or in my case, many years later, you're still wanting to know what happens next, but just too scared to actually dip your toes into it. So my goal for this year is to actually push past the Poppy War and continue with the series. I might get around to the Burning Gods in maybe 2 or 3 years. The next book that's high on my TBR is Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland, and this would be my first book by this author. Although I do have other works by this author. I do have In the Ravenous Dark, which I got in a Lumacrate. This is a book that I felt drawn to for a really long time, and I mean years. The premise of it just sounds so good. In this book, the main character is a soul walker, and that means that they can travel into other people's souls while they sleep. Every time the main character has done this, though, she sees a black door in her dreamscape. But her mother has told her to never open this door. When tragedy strikes, though, the main character hears her name called through that door and she opens it. This is described as a dark fantasy featuring court intrigue and romance, A main character comes to terms with her asexuality and twists and turns as seductive mystery unfolds that endangers not only the main character's soul but the entire kingdom. Tell me that does not sound like a really immense storyline. Very few concepts of books make me as excited as this one on my shelves. And I don't know why, I'm just really not wanting to dive into this as soon as I pick it up. I've had it for a few years now, but to me it's kind of like a wintry autumnal read. That's kind of when I'm feeling most dark fantasy. Summer, although we can't really call whatever this is in the UK as summer right now, is definitely more contemporary romance reading time for me, but this one will be an autumn read for this year. Another book I'm hoping to get round to in autumn, I think I've had this on my shelves for two years. I think this is actually the second Fairyloot book that I ever got. It's The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. This would be another first read for me by this author. This definitely was the second book that I ever got from Fairyloot, and I really love this edition. Although now looking back on it, you see how far Fairyloot's actually come because it has no end papers at all, and that's kind of what Fairyloot is really known for now, is their beautiful end papers. What I didn't realise though, when I first got this book, this is the first time I've ever seen this book is actually dedicated to Sarah J Maas. Oh, they must be friends. I didn't know. So The Prison Healer, I think, is a trilogy now and is complete, if I remember right. And I just need to read this book. The main character is 17-year-old Kiva, and she is in a deaf prison, and she works there as a healer. Kiva has one goal, and that is to stay alive. One day, the infamous rebel queen arrives at the prison on death's door, and Kiva receives a new message. Don't let her die, we are coming. The queen is sentenced to trial by ordeal, which is a series of elemental challenges, but Kiva, knowing that the rebel queen will not survive these, she offers to take her place, and if she succeeds, both her and the queen will be granted their freedom. This is a young adult fantasy that I've heard many things about, all of them being very good, and I really want to read it before I feel myself starting to age out of young adult fantasy. I still enjoy it, I also still enjoy middle grade, but that's not necessarily what I'm leaning more towards when I want to pick up a book, and I'm more likely to DNF in middle grade and a young adult book right now. I'm just finding that it takes more for me to actually enjoy it right now, so that's why this is high on my TBR, because I really want to read it while I still feel like I've got a really good chance of enjoying it. Does anyone else feel themselves aging out of YA? I don't know whether it's just because I feel like I'm reading the same tropes over and over again, and maybe I just need to branch out my YA a little bit. Adult books are just where it's at for me right now. Next book, okay. I read book one when this came out, so I read book one literally the week that this series came out, and this must have come out in maybe 7 years ago, if not more, and I've only ever read book one and two still. I hated book one. And book two is one of my favourite books of all time. Because I hated book one so much, it took me until last January to read book two. And when I finished book two, I cried because I felt like I would never read a book that I loved as much as that one again. And I'm going to just let you try and guess what it is. Let's play a little game. And I've wanted to read book three for a long time, but I'm also now stuck at this same point where I've read something that I really love, and I know that book three is going to be worse than book two. And I'm finding it so hard to push through. Anyway, the third book in that series is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. I know that this is not going to be as good as Mist and Fury, and that's why I'm struggling to read it. I still think about that book nearly on a daily basis, definitely weekly. But I know that if I want to read Crescent City book 3, I need to get caught up. So A Court of Wings and Ruins is definitely a book that I'm going to get around to reading, hopefully in the next few months, but I do want to reread book 1 and 2 before I read book 3, because that's just the way I am, and I forget things very easy, and I like to read a series kind of like in full, back to back. I just feel like that's the most enjoyable experience. So we need to start at book 1 before we get around to this, but I am reading a lot of really interesting things right now that I want to finish up before I get into this, and I have also just bought the Throne of Glass series in full. I have so much to read for January. A Court of Thorns and Roses as a series. Book 1 is terrible, book 2 is great. I highly recommend reading book 1 just so you can read book 2 if you enjoy romantasy. If you are a romantasy reader though and you haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses, there's a reason for it. I highly doubt that anybody's watching my channel not knowing what this is. The first book is a bit of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but 2 really drives it from there, and it turns into its own world and own storyline. Oh, I don't know what it is about books published by Bloomsbury, but they just always smell so good. Next! I could stand there and smell that all day. Also high up on my TBR, which comes with amazing recommendations, and it's got so many good reviews on Goodreads. That is The Sword of Kaijen. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. This is the first book in a series. This is actually self-published, but I don't know if this has subsequently been picked up by a major publisher, but my edition is self-published. This book is an adult high fantasy novel, and I've just read on Goodreads that I think this is a prequel to another series, although I thought this was book one, but I guess that's what a prequel is. Anyway, I was looking for something on Goodreads that would help me explain what this book is about, because it's got like an essay on the back and it's quite hard to understand myself and put this out from here into here to here, but that was still as complicated. So basically what I take from this is that one of the main characters is a 14-year-old boy who has been bred for the purpose of becoming a warrior. He is the son of a father who is a well-known warrior, and the 14-year-old wants to continue that legacy. However, when an outsider arrives, he becomes to question whether the empire he's born to defend might stand on a foundation of lies. The other main character, I can't tell whether this is the boy's mother or not because it's part of the same family, but doesn't specify whether that's his mother or not. She feels like she's left the passion of her youth behind when she marries into that house. She's determined to be a good housewife and mother, and she's hid away her sword along with everything from her days as a fighter in a faraway country. But with her son asking questions, they must be mother and son. With her son asking questions about the outside world, the threat of an invasion looming on the horizon, and her frigid husband grating on her nerves, Misaki finds the fighter in her clawing its way back to the surface. I too would feel like picking up a sword if I had a husband grating on my nerves too, so fair play. This book is over 600 pages long, and it has a glossary that is over 10 pages long, and a list of characters, which is 9 pages long. So that's why I haven't got around to reading this yet. But it sounds great. I am also really looking forward to reading A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon, although I don't know if I'm going to actually read this one specifically because this is a signed copy and I don't want to get my grubby fingers all over this and ruin it because it's my baby. I have read The Priory of the Orange Tree, which I will get out. I love an excuse to get my books off my shelves and have a look at them on this way because I only ever see them that way. Any excuse to get my babies out and have a look at them. And I love looking at these together. I think as a series these look absolutely awesome and wicked. And the reason that I love the Priory of the Orange Tree is because it is truly a high fantasy epic that's written by a woman that I love. And it's got sapphic elements. I can't think of any other book that is an epic fantasy like this, written by a female author that has a sapphic main character. So when I found out we were getting more, I was in my element. And I'm still so happy about it. I am planning on rereading The Priory of the Orange Tree before reading A Day of Fallen Night, even though this is a prequel. And really you shouldn't need to read this one in order to read this one, but let's just get immersed. Any excuse to reread The Priory of the Orange Tree. I love them. I can't stop looking at them. And it's got dragons on it. Oh, look at the backs too. Isn't this amazing? Right, what is The Day of Fallen Night about? The Day of Fallen Night is a prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, which I've already said, adult, high fantasy, sapphic main characters. Like with most high fantasy books that are this long, there's a few storylines that are running through the books alongside each other that don't necessarily come together. If they do, they come together at the very end. But the main point of this novel is kind of like a war between good and evil across the continent. One of the main characters is a queen who must have a daughter in order to protect her realm from destruction. Another main character is a lady in waiting who is also a protector, warrior, fighter kind. She also belongs to a secret magic order. And another main character is across the sea, and they are a dragon rider. Forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. I don't particularly know a lot about the prequel or how it fits into this universe, or even how far behind we are in this book. So for those that have read the first book, we have a return to the Priory of the Orange Tree. We have a main character who is there but is questioning the Priory's purpose. We do follow another Queen Sabran, but I'm guessing this is a different Queen Sabran. She's married a king and is trying to save the realm from ruin, and her daughter Glorian is trailing in her shadow exactly where she wants to be. We have the dragons in the east, and we have all of these women that need to come together to protect humankind from a devastating threat. So it kind of sounds like the themes of the first book, but just remixed and put into a new book, and I'm very excited. But again, this is what, 1,000 pages? 900 pages. I don't know when I'm going to read this. Although I did read The Priory of the Orange Tree in a week. I didn't do much else other than read that book, but I did read it in a week, so this might appear on my TBR at some point this year. Do you know the big mystery of books? You take them off your shelves and they fit, and when you go to put them back on your shelves, they no longer fit. So 4 more books to go. The next one is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. This is another adult high fantasy written by a woman. Very exciting times. The plot of this book also sounds truly epic, but it does sound like other books that I do own. There's a Rebecca Ross book that comes to mind when I think about this, which I haven't read. I just think the premises sound really, really close to each other, but it's kind of like what I like in fantasy. So the main character is raised by a death cult steeped in old magic, and on her 14th birthday, she's destined to climb a mountain and sacrifice herself. But as she prepares for death, a sorcerer offers her a new fate. He says, "Come and work with me to be an assassin, and we're going to go and find a missing artifact." She becomes his thief, spy, and assassin, and together they are trying to re-establish control and topple an empire. But the main character will discover that the gods remember she may learn to live on a knife edge, gaining skills and power, but friends can turn to traitors, and if you live long enough, all debts become due. I get really excited about reading female high fantasy because the majority of the high fantasy that I read at this level is written by men. And that's not to say that men write bad books, they don't. They write epic books, and I'm just trying to balance the scales a little bit. I have so many books by Mark Lawrence and John Gwynne that I also really need to read as well, but I'm going to try and prioritise these first. Third to last book, we're jumping back into romantasy, and I want to read book 2 to the Bridge Kingdom as soon as I can. Book 2 is The Traitor Queen, and that closes off this immediate duology, but there is a third book and I think a fourth book coming out, which are based in the same world but with a different main character. The Bridge Kingdom I've spoke about quite a bit on this channel, and if you are a romantasy reader but you like your world building to still have political elements to it, then the Bridge Kingdom is for you. 5 stars for this book. I anticipate this one being a 5-star as well. The main character is called Laura, which is a name that I absolutely love. And she is wed by her father to the prince, or is he king? I think he's a king, of another kingdom, so that she can go and spy for her father and then feed information back to him. The world building is what I love about this, because the kingdom that she marries into is literally like this tiny sliver of land that goes between 2 major continents. And some of these are like islands, but they have a road that runs all the way through, and they are controlling all of the trade between these 2 continents. So what the dad, who was from the kingdom of down here once, is to get rid of his kingdom so that he has more free access to this land up here. However, when Lara goes, she discovers that her new husband isn't all as she anticipated, and I just love it. Lara is a great main character. This is enemies to lovers. This is how enemies to lovers is done. Oh my god. I need book 2 ASAP, but again, I want to reread book 1 before I read book 2. Even though I did buy this straight after buying the first one, I felt like I'd kind of wanted to read this one a little bit more before I jumped ahead into book 2. If this book is just as good as book 1, then Danielle Jensen is probably fast going to become one of my favourite authors. And if anyone's read The Bridge Kingdom and can recommend me any more books which are kind of like this political romantasy, please let me know what you are reading and what I should be reading. I thought this was going to be like a super quick video to film, and I've actually gone through a full battery because I've just been stood here absolutely having the time of my life talking about books that I really love. I'm going to have to cut so much of this out. We're down to the final 2 books now, thank god. And the second to last book that I want to read a lot is Babel by R.F. Kuang, another book by R.F. Kuang, and this is a signed edition. I have the Waterstone signed edition, I have the Illumicrate edition, and I have the Fairyloot edition. So I better like this damn book. If I don't, I'm in trouble. I think I might actually buy this in paperback as well, just to make this a little bit more portable. I don't actually like reading hardbacks, and that's why a lot of the books that I really want to read the most in this video are my hardbacks, but I just don't enjoy reading hardbacks. I do a lot of my reading out of the house, and I wouldn't take a signed R.F. Kuang out of the house. Hence why I might need to buy a 4th edition of this book. Babel is a bit of an odd one. It seems to be like you either love it or you hate it. Some people have said this is an absolute masterpiece and one of the best books that they've ever read. A lot of people have said that you just can't push through it and it's a DNF. I think I know more people that have DNF Babel than have actually sat and read it and enjoyed it, which makes me very worried. But I will read anything by R.F. Kuang, so I am in. Babel is a fantasy novel which centres on the act of translation. The year is 1836 and this book is set in Oxford. The Royal Institute of Translation is based in Oxford University in this tower, the tower from which all the power of the empire flows. Obviously this is not real, this is fantasy. The main character, Robin, was orphaned in Canton and brought to England by a mysterious guardian, and he thought that Babel was a paradise until it became a prison, but can a student stand against an empire? A quote famously attached to this book is, "An act of translation is always an act of betrayal." This is one of the most beautiful books that I own, so I'm going to be very, very sad if I don't like it, but I genuinely think I may give this a 4-star. That's my prediction for this book. The rest are a 5-star. This one is a 4-star, I'm not sure. I will be having a reading vlog for this because I have picked this for my Dark Academia reading vlog, which is ongoing, currently in film. That's because I haven't read Babel yet, so if you want to see my real-time reaction to Babel, then please subscribe so you can watch that reading vlog when it comes out, because I don't know when I'm going to be brave enough to read this. And last but certainly not least is the first book in the Imperium trilogy, Furyborn by Claire Legrand. This has been high on my TBR anyway, but not necessarily in the top 10 until Illumicrate announced that they were doing special editions of this trilogy, and I said, well, I might want to buy them, so I better get reading book 1 to see whether I like it or not. And I'm so pleased that they did delay the sale of that series because I still haven't picked this book up and it gives me more time. The reason that they delayed the sale of buying them is because they realised that AI had been used in the art of the special edition, and I'm so pleased that they were so transparent about that. Now, Furyborn is a book that really sings to me and sings to my soul when it comes to fantasy. I think this is classed as young adult. It's definitely been out for some time now. Two young women, centuries apart, hold the power to either save their world or doom it. The first main character is Riel. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Riel. Her best friend is the Crown Prince and he's ambushed by assassins, and she risks everything to save him, including exposing her ability to perform all 7 kinds of elemental power. The only people who should possess this power are a pair of prophesied queens, a queen of light and a queen of blood. To prove she's the Sun Queen, Riel must endure 7 trials to test her magic. If she fails, she will be executed unless the trial destroys her first. 1,000 years later, the legend of Queen Riel is a mere fairy tale to bounty hunter Eliana. When the Undying Empire conquer her kingdom, she embraces violence to keep her family safe. Now she believes herself untouchable until her mother vanishes. To find her, Eliana joins a rebel captain on a dangerous mission and discovers that the evil at the heart of the Empire is more terrible than she ever imagined. As Riel and Eliana fight in a cosmic war that spans millennia, their stories intersect, and the shocking connections between them will ultimately determine the fate of their world and each other. I love stories where they have this huge timeline gap between 2 events, but they end up like interlinked and connected to each other. I think that's really clever when done really well. So if that's done really well in this book, I can see this being a 5-star read for me. Very easy. And again, this will not go back on the shelf. So that is 10 books that are on my TBR that I'm dying to get around to reading, even though I'm dying to get around to reading all of them. Them 10 are more specifically ones that I'm very excited to read, and I've been wanting to read them for a very, very long time. Yes. I wish I could just like take all my books and just kind of like consume them in my head. I don't think I have enough years of life left to actually finish them all. But when I stop having books just kind of like piled in front of books, that's when I'm going to start feeling a bit happier. My goal this year is to have it so none of my books are actually like this, and that they're all not stacked like this either, that they're all just on their sides, just on the shelf, like normal books. I've read 27 books this year so far. I'm hoping to ramp up my reading so I can get rid of a lot of these and take you on my reading journey with me, hopefully. I hope everyone's well. Let me know what you are dying to read. If you've read any of these books, please let me know what your thoughts were, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.